Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. As you well know, I live in China. I've made a life for myself in China. I'm an American by birth, and I was born in the 50s. And at that time, America was a land full of promise and hope, and all through the 60s, we believed in a bright and shining future. Who could deny it? But yet in the 60s, something happened. There was a military takeover of the United States. Sure, it was an oligarchy for many decades before the death of Robert Kennedy. But when the oligarchy decided to kill him off and replace him with a system of clowns and puppets that they would control, the nature of the United States changed. When you change something, everything else changes alongside with it. And the culture of the United States changed. There was an immediate backlash of anger, and the late 60s was full of turmoil and upset. People like to associate it with one cause or the other, but if you look at the big picture, it was a period of upset. Everybody was angry. Everybody was disturbed. But the United States government was very fat and happy doing what it was always doing, taking over and controlling things. And that lasted for a long, long time. Right now it's coming to an end. But if you look at the big picture, you can see that so many things stopped when the United States became a military empire. Advances in space exploration ended. The idea that there would be a global world full of equals ended, and one where the United States would become the leader of the world emerged. I argue that the oligarchy that set the system into change, as well as the oligarchy that is in power right now, are people and individuals that are psychopathic or sociopathic in nature. It may not necessarily be a particular individual, like a George Soros, for example, but it could be a cluster of people who are in a echo chamber demanding things to occur, such as a neocon. These individuals are seemingly driving the United States into a state like a leech, sucking the blood out of the United States until it is a empty hulk, a crisp and burnt out hulk. And you can see that. Oh, there's beautiful parts in the United States, and there's nice things about the United States. But it's been sucked dry. It is not what it used to be. Anybody can deny that what you see in the United States culturally, socially, economically, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of research and development, is what it used to be prior to the takeover and the assassination of John F. Kennedy by the military arm of the reigning oligarchy that controls the United States, then you really have no business being here, because that's exactly what I'm seeing. You have you have to accept things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Now you have a situation that the United States is in decay, and it is collapsing in a spectacular fashion. History indicates that there will be a full collapse followed by a rebirth. This is normally an event driven by war, primarily. And while the war might be localized to a certain area, think in terms of the American Civil War, it may be localized to a certain area, there's certain criteria and aspects of it that follow a very defined pattern. That is true regardless of all such collapses. There's a period of apparent insanity and hyper emotional manipulation at all levels. Prior to World War II, there was a frenzied, or not prior to World War, well, actually prior to World War II, as well as prior to the American Civil War, was frenzied news reports and all sorts of things. And there was turmoil in industry, turmoil in the markets, and all sorts of other things. Domestically, there was a period of lead up. We had the Great Depression, and then the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression, cycling up and down in fast, short cycles. It was no longer stable. When a system runs out of kilter, it starts gyrating wildly, mechanically. Electronically, it happens a little bit differently, but the aspects are similar. And likewise, with nations, they are also similar. When things start to get out of kilter, things start gyrating wildly. I have long argued that the oligarchy are idiots. There's no question that the puppets are idiots. I mean, if you look at Biden, he's not even suitable as a puppet any longer. He makes no decisions. He's just a face in front of a camera. Normally, if you're in this environment, you see there's something wrong as your system gyrates and swings back and forth. And you ride it until the gyrations get so crazy that you don't know what to do. But in reality, you don't really see what's going on. You think you see what's going on, but you're sitting in the middle of it. You don't see the bigger picture. You have to, as we would say in the United States, get out from the forest, walk away a bit, and look at the trees. Well, that's one thing that I've been able to do living in China, living outside the United States. I can actually see what's going on, and I don't really like it, but I understand it. China is what America used to be, and the leadership of China sees what America has become and will not allow it. So when China is making these various rules, like the control of large oligarchies, the control of very wealthy people and corporations, they do so for the benefit of the society. And if you look at everything, you will notice what Xi Jinping is doing. It's for the benefit of society, not for the benefit of a few. Throughout the American culture is this idea that the more money you have, the more power you have, and that's a good thing. It's not a good thing. In fact, I argue that it's a bad thing. You don't want an accumulation of goods. You do not want an accumulation of power. What you really want is a life free from worry, free from manipulation by anybody, safe and secure, and protected by your society. A role where you have a place within the role, a seat at the table, so to speak. Free from need, free from want, protected when ill, living comfortably, enabling you to enjoy life in a productive way where you are involved in creative or industrious pursuits. That's what you really want. And if you had that, you would be a very happy person. Now, of course, what I just said was super profound. Very, very profound. And I'm sure it went over the minds and the thoughts of 80% of the listeners. But look at what the West is. The entire societies are geared towards making money, spending money, collecting money. Look at your news feeds. What are the articles about? Is that healthy? We're taught that it is. And media controlled by others, and your computers and cell phones infiltrated by others. And your society denigrated to boxes in isolation, where you ride in a car in isolation, to a job where you sit in a cubicle in isolation. Or even worse, you're in your box in your house and you telecommute. This isolation is not healthy for human beings. And why are you doing it? Why are you obeying the isolation? Well, you work for a company. The company mandates this. You need to do it to put money on the table. Why? Why do you need to put money on a table? I'm asking sophomoric questions, but they need to be revisited. Could it be possible that you could have a system, a different system, where you provide services as part of your community and you need not want for anything? And I'm here to tell you, living in China, that it is possible. China is not there yet, but it's working towards that goal. And one of the major steps in that goal is, of course, The February 4th, 2022 declaration of the new world order, the new nation state of Asia, the unity, the document of friendship of the joint democracies of Russia and China. Lambasted as silly and nonsensical in the West and pretty much ignored, this important document described the future of the world in great detail, described the enemies of that future, points its fingers solidly at the United States, and gathers together the rest of the world to work together for the mutual benefit of all. There's people in the United States right now that are seriously contemplating leaving the federal government. They see no benefit in having a federal government from their point of view, and I don't blame them. States need to get out of this mess. Billions and billions of dollars, all their tax revenue is going to massively wealthy people and building guns and wars. Meanwhile, the states are living impoverished lives for the vast majority of Americans. Well, that's not good. Of course you want to get out of that system. You desire to get out of that system. You need to leave that system. So the natural inclination is to take your little community, whether it's a state or a county, and go through the American legal system, the American system, to break away. And of course, while it's on paper and there is a system, it's a complicated system, it's a long drawn out system, and it's fraught with peril and probably won't work. And if it did work, the federal government has the ability to squash everybody into jelly. They can stop it in a moment's notice. And that's why you haven't been seeing a lot of breaks. But once the United States starts fracturing, the rest, like a house of cards and like a set of dominoes, is going to start collapsing as well. There are independent movements throughout the United States. Hawaii, where the people said, hey, the federal government stole our land. We never agreed to it. You just came in and appointed your own system. California wants to break off. The Southwest wants to break away because they believe that they're associated more with the societies of Mesoamerica. You have Virginia, and you have the communities of inside of Texas that say, hey, we never said that we're in the United States forever. We should be our own government again. There's all these independent movements going on. And all it takes is one or two to start. And the rest will follow. A couple years ago, California tried to break into 3 separate states. It made complete sense. It was too big to be governed centrally out of Sacramento. There was a southern part, a northern part, and a central part, more or less. Of course, the powerful running California, as well as the powerful running the United States government, did not want this for a host of reasons. Bigger chunks are easier to control. But you're going to see more of that, I predict. It's going to happen slow or it's going to happen sudden, but it will happen. As I said, the system is gyrating wildly right now. It's gyrating wildly. Anything's possible. Hopefully, it's going to change without casualties. But we cannot guarantee that. We can't guarantee that. We can hope for that, but we can't guarantee it. So here I am in China, and I'm seeing them, the Chinese, watching all this going on. And you can tell how they are systematically controlling and isolating all the factors that are leading up to decay that they're witnessing in the United States. Everything from addictions to online games to corporations becoming big and big and big and cutting out the opportunities for the little guys, to companies buying up other companies and becoming one company, stifling innovation and opportunity, to rich people buying houses over and over again to raise the price of real estate so that they can make a lot of money even though the houses themselves remain empty. Controlling people who seem to have an interest in politics where their sources of income are not clear, like Jimmy Lee. Here's a guy, he's in Hong Kong. He was one of the forces behind the pro-democracy independence movement in Hong Kong. He ran yellow journalism. He had a newspaper. He brought in from that business perhaps 600,000 US dollars a year. But Mr. Lee somehow was making $6 million a year from somewhere. The Chinese found out about it, tracked him down. They told him to stop. He didn't. Told him to stop again. He didn't. Told him to stop again. He didn't. Arrested him. Said, if you don't do it and stop, we're going to really hurt you. He didn't listen. Why doesn't he listen? He's doing good. He's got a lot of money. Why doesn't he listen? Maybe the people who bought and sold him, the ones that owned him because of the money, are telling him, no, you have to keep fighting. That's what we pay you for. In any event, Chinese seized all of his possessions, his money, his assets, his homes, and put him in jail, no, actually in prison, for a long time. There are articles on where the money came from, but I'll give you the short skinny on it. It came from the United States government, American taxpayer money, through systems, mostly NGOs, and through corporate hidden monetary transfers in various ways. It's fascinating how this large sums of money go here and there, beyond my comprehension. I'm a small guy. I'm lucky to get $20. So, anyways, China is seeing how the systems in the West work. They don't like it, and they're setting up systems to prevent that. And Russia is too. Now, I'm aware of Russia from the Chinese point of view, and I'm aware of what's going on as an American, but I don't know all the details except from what I read on the Russian expat blogs. Essentially, Russia is doing the same sort of thing. Putin has gotten rid of a lot of these oligarchs and set up rules and systems in place. And for those of you who think that the United States now has the rest of the world by its balls and cojones, you are totally drinking the electric Kool-Aid of the American media. That's not what's going on. My big fear is that once the United States tires of Russia, it's going to pivot to China. And China will be smiling and polite, and then they will fucking blow your kneecaps off. Wait for it. Wait for it. China does not play. Go ask any long-duration expat who's lived in China for a long time. They'll tell you the same thing. And I'm going to rant a little bit about this one chick from Hong Kong who spent her entire life working for this anti-China newspaper and gets interviewed talking about, and she's an expert on China. She's not an expert on China. She's an expert on hating China, but she's not an expert on China. Jeez. Anyways, I ranted on about her yesterday. Enough of that nonsense. So guys, while the rest of the world is seeing what's going on in America, they don't want it. Yet they're entangled with the American and Western systems. America's got its little claws in everything. But you know what I'm watching? One by one, they're getting taken out. The Solomons is one such example. Australia had it under its thumb and wasn't doing the Solomons any good. So they turned to China. China says, okay. And improved systems, better deals are now being made. And if you know where the Solomons are, you can easily see why Australia has become so hysterical about it. And, well, guys, you see people, and the whole purpose of this little talk right now is that while it seems that the United States is going through meltdown, because it actually is, you are riding within the changes. If you're in the West, you're riding within the gyrations. It looks like your entire world is shaking apart. And it's easy to assume that the entire world is thus shaking apart. It's not. Just the West is shaking apart. The East isn't. The East is under complete control. If you were to go inside of Russia, you would see that everything is fine and dandy. You go inside of China, you'll see everything is fine and dandy. You go into India, you'll see that things are fine and dandy. And that's a perspective that I'm here to tell you. If you are in this jumping, galloping, leaping, bucking elephant that is the West right now, you want to have a stable, controlled life. And you need that. And so I ask for you to turn to Asia, look at what they're doing, create that in your own little environment, and you will start seeing your reality simmer down while the rest of the world goes into a state of fury. What are the basics? Center yourself. Center yourself. Your consciousness resides within your body. News media, electronic radiation, all kinds of things going on around you in this turmoil is causing the centering of your consciousness to move about within your body. It's not where it should be. It's not in its ultimate location. Center it. Use Hemisync or a similar system of audio to center your consciousness within your body. Accept yourself as a whole unit, your physical body. While you're centering your consciousness within your body, you also have to center your body in your environment. What does that mean? What you take in your body must be good for you. The old food pyramid. Make sure you have rice, grains, breads as your basis. In your meat section, you need a variety of meats, proteins, eggs, chicken, beef, mutton, fish. Don't concentrate on one type of food. Mix it up some. The more fish you eat, the healthier your body will be. Make sure you have dairy products and eat lots of fruit and vegetables. Clean everything. These are basics. Cut down fast food way down. Fast food restaurant or a fast food themed restaurant should be a once in a month event. You should be eating better. If you start comparing the amount of money that you're paying for fast food as opposed to eating in a mom and pop restaurant that might serve fish with a vegetable, is only a little bit more money, but the quality of food is so much better. So you've got your centering of thoughts, you've got the food that's coming into your body. What's next? Your environment, your thoughts. Tune down the negative bullshit news. It's designed to manipulate you. Turn it off. You can watch media, but you be selective in the media. There's nothing more shocking to me that when I went on YouTube and I went through 3 movie summaries where they actually take a movie and they summarize it in 5 minutes. And I went through 15 minutes of this. I went through 3 movies. 3 movies that were made in the last 3 years. And it was shocking to me. The ways to handle this period of change is fundamental, and I have concentrated and discussed this over and over again. I went through and you must focus your mind. You must focus your consciousness. There are systems, electromagnetic systems that are beamed at you through movies, through everything. And you need to recognize that. You need to isolate that. In a movie, the system's very sophisticated. The signals that beam into you ready your body and then hit you with the manipulative parts of the videos, and then it calms down. When you watch on the YouTube the 5-minute summaries of the movies, where they take the movies, they cut out the build-up, they cut out the letdown, they just give you the full force, you can actually see and feel the results of the subliminal frequencies. Go ahead, take one of the movies. It was made in the last 5 years. Take 3 of the movies, go through the 5-minute segments where they summarize the movies summarize caps. Go through that, watch them in a row. Monitor how you feel before you watch them, monitor how you feel after you watch them. If you watch 3 of it in a row, the effect will be very large. You will see how they affect you. And this is very important. So remember, what you see affects you, and you have to control that. And what they're doing is it's affecting your body chemistry, but it also is knocking the living shit out of your consciousness centering. To control that, you need to use Hemisync or a similar system that centers using audio. It centers your consciousness within your physical body. It's very, very, very crucially important. All other things I've talked about apply. Control your environment, control your thoughts. Thoughts without action does nothing. That's why you have intention prayer campaigns. That controls your thoughts. You vocalize those thoughts, then you act upon those thoughts. It's very important. But it means nothing unless you do a fate forecasting. You have to know the relative ability for your affirmations to manifest. That's called whether or not it's going to be an auspicious manifestation or an inauspicious manifestation. And that is controlled by fate forecasting. Use your fate forecasting and to control the movement within the world line templates. So you'll know your topography. Your fate forecasting will have an influence on the topography of the terrain that you have to go through. Fate forecasting controls world line map topography. It's fixed. By controlling the overlays, by sliding, you can move on and off the various topographies. But still, it's crucially important that you follow the fundamentals, because the fundamentals will help you irregardless of anything else. Be good, smile, be the Rufus. You go out, you smile. You offer a free cup of coffee to a coworker. You bring some snacks into work. You sit down, you park yourself at a fellow coworker's desk, and you chat a little bit. You be good. Help other people. Be Rufus. Be kind. Clean up some messes. Don't allow garbage in your front yard. Help others. Provide services. Get some skills to help others. Donate. Volunteer. Participate. Stop being a spectator. The American society and the Western society is geared for everybody to be spectators sitting in cubicles. That is not the human condition. So stop it. You can't deny that that is what has happened. So while the world is gyrating wildly out of control, you have controlled your reality. So don't be afraid of the leaping elephant that you're sitting on top because you're in the West. Know that the East is under control and is being managed well, and you can duplicate what they're doing in your own reality. Do it. And you will find that during this period of change, this contentious change, you will be fine. You will be doing just hunky-dory, and everything will be good. See, people, there's a lot of good people out there. I want you to be the best you can possibly be. And that's what I want of you. If we have more people in the world striving to be the best, being helpful to others, participating in society, society will grow and bloom like a flower. But if we have everybody who's sitting in boxes, self-absorbed, self-centered, getting beamed at by these movies, it's affecting their personality. You have to turn that off and create the new environment that you belong in. Control your thoughts, control your actions, control your world. It's all one and the same. What I'm talking about is a glimpse of the other side, what life is like after we pass through this period of time. Already we can imagine what's going to exist. And it's going to exist regardless of whatever changes or fiascos may occur during the change from one geopolitical state to the other. It's certainly going to change. So we have glimpses of what's going to happen. It's going to be a calmer life. No matter how you look at it, there is a movement across the board to change how we use media. That's in process. No longer are people using cable television or paying for Netflix that much or watching the big three mainstream media or even following a lot of the alternative media. People are going straight to grassroots organization, straight to homemade videos and other things such as that. Entertainment and news and communication is in the process of changing, as well as the workplace. The workplace is changing. People are becoming more independent, whether you're working in an office or whether you're working at home. People are becoming more independent. The old 1920s, 1930s ideal of everybody punching a 9-to-5 time card and sitting in a large room full of desks is over. As is the nature of transportation. The idea of commuting for 3 hours, that's in the process of being eliminated. Unless you have to do it, most people won't do it. And how they do that is going to change. For instance, in China, there's all sorts of ways to commute. Bicycles, electric scooters, trams, subways, buses. They're all cheap, affordable, and easy to access. And by changing the way that, or changing the methodology of how you go from point A to point B, will affect everything else. What if you don't have a car? What if you only use public transportation? Well, that's a huge part of your bill, your income, that you now have access to. If you need to go somewhere outside of your local area, then you hire a car, or you hire a taxi or a driver, or you rent a car. It doesn't matter. You just don't need to have a car to go everywhere. But it's more than just that. Suppose instead of riding a 15-minute ride to the workplace, you decide to bicycle to it, and it takes 40 minutes. This assumes you're in a suburb going to a workplace. What's the difference? Well, it's a big difference. For one thing, you're getting exercise and fresh air. And when it's raining, it's a little uncomfortable, but maybe you take the car or take public transportation at that time, or carpool or something. But for the most part, you're able to bicycle with fresh air, a calmer pace of life. When you're bicycling, it's calmer. You're not fighting traffic to make it to the red light. You're not worrying about police pulling you over, if you're an American, that is. You're not fighting for a parking space. But there's something else. And if you don't ride a bike, you will not be aware of this. When you're riding in a car and you go from your house to the job, all these buildings and everything on the side is just a blur. Passes by, you don't give it a moment's thought. But when you're riding on the sidewalk on a bicycle and you take your time, you look and you see these little mom and pop stores. Maybe you stop over and pick up some milk, some eggs, and some vegetables on the way home from a local grocery. Maybe you pull over and see a little restaurant or coffee house, and you go in and get yourself a cup of joe. You're more in tune with the local community where you live, instead of going from one box to another box. And let's face it, people, that's American and certainly Western society. You go from one box to another box. Your house is a box. Then you go into a car, it's a box. That car takes you to your workplace, which is a box. And for most of you, you sit in a cubicle farm, which is a box. You go from one box to another box to another box. That was one of the biggest things that I got so upset. I did not become an aviator, train, and become a Majestic just to live a life as a cubicle worker. But that was what ended up happening, because as an emissary, or as the eyes and ears, I had to endure that bullshit. That's another subject altogether. So this is all the change that we're seeing. And as more and more people adapt to these changes, the movement away from, say, eating McDonald's fast food to having some homegrown food that you prepare yourself is going to result in slimmer bodies, healthier attitudes, and less frenzied pace of life. And that's one thing that we can look forward to. That's what's going to happen. Now, there's going to be a lot of casualties in those changes. Do you think that McDonald's and the shareholders of all these fast food restaurants are going to be happy as the value of their investments plummet? No. They're not going to be happy. What about all the people who are tied together with the automotive industry, whatever that industry may be, gas or electric? There's going to be some great changes You know, I read a great article, and I'm posting it on Metallic Man. You'll eventually get it as it goes through the pipe, about Fred, and he's over in Washington, D.C., and he talks about what it's like in the wealthy suburbs of the multimillionaires who feed upon the super millionaires that feed upon the oligarchy out in Washington, D.C. And they are completely delusional and unaware. And he describes how he went into a buffet and it was $90 a person. Totally clueless. It's like France right before the fall of Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette. Totally clueless. And he made a point. In Appalachia and West Virginia and Pennsylvania, there's a lot of people that view going out to McDonald's and getting a cheap budget meal as a source of entertainment, let alone this $90 buffet. They're totally unaware of the seismic changes that are about to hit. We can talk about the changes, and I don't really have a handle on the changes. I know the commander says little bads rather than big bads, but we don't know. All I know is whoever is running the United States, they're idiots. They're just complete, absolute idiots. The situation and the game plan has completely changed by Asia, but the Westerners, the American plans, have not changed one iota. They've tried to adapt. They're failing at every point in turn. So that tells me there's no leadership. There's certainly no strategy. There's no adaptation. You take away adaptation, a species dies. When an animal, a creature, is no longer able to adapt, it dies. The dodo bird couldn't adapt to the American airplane base on its habitat. It died. If you're a species and you cannot adapt, you die. If you're a government and you cannot adapt, you die. Doesn't matter if you've got 6,000 nuclear warheads and hundreds of submarines, you will die. It's just the magnitude of the death is the only variant. I guess nobody wants to hear that, right? You want to hear America's the best, right? That the British Empire, in whatever form, will endure, smile and carry on, and all that rot. You want to believe that being an isolated nation like Australia, that you're protected. Organisms, whether it's biological, sociological, all follow the same patterns. And what we're watching is a pattern of death, change, and rebirth. And my bet is that we are somewhere near the plateau of a period of extraordinary change in the geopolitical realm. I think we're nearing a peak moment. I don't think we've reached it yet. It's coming and approaching closely. We'll know when we pass through it when we see an alteration in the behaviors of the United States. I'm just cutting to the chase. The leadership of the United States change its behaviors. We know we've moved past the inflection point. But until they change their behaviors, we haven't moved. Why the United States? Because it's the dominant Western power. Why the United States? Because it has been the dominant global power for 75 some years. Why the United States? It's culturally, economically, sociologically significant. When the leadership of that social organization changes how they handle things, and they adapt, then we will cross through this threshold. If they don't adapt, the entire system will collapse, whether to a whimper or whether by a big bang and a white flash, a whole bunch of white flashes. So what can we see? What's it going to be like when we cross through this inflection point? What is it going to be like? Well, guys, I can't predict the future, but I can tell you about trends, historical trends. And I'm seeing trends going on right now, as you all are seeing, right? You're all seeing all kinds of trends. One of the trends is a lack of malls in the United States, while a growth in malls is popular in China. I personally believe that is an evidence of the fall, the decline, or the rise of a middle class. If you have a middle class, you have large malls where the community can gather. If you don't, and it's decaying, you lose your malls. That's one indicator. Another indicator is crime. Nations in decline see an increase in crime. Nations in decline see an increase in crime. Boy, that rhymes. While nations on the rise see a decrease in crime. And that's what you're seeing in China. China has severely cut down on the criminal elements, from the petty criminal elements all the way to the sophisticated, rich criminal elements. Now, the United States has legalized criminal activity. The oligarchs are lawless. They can do whatever they want and get away with it. Americans know this when you see habitual serial rapists getting off. Okay? Epstein was not murdered, did not commit suicide, did he? And in the United States, if you're aware of it, there's a million tiny hands in your wallet. Taxes and fees for everything, registration for everything. If you want to get anything done, there's always this network where you're paying. That will collapse. It's not collapsing yet, but it will, because during this period of change, on the other side of this period of change will be less crime. On the local levels, you will see more activism in policing of the local criminal elements. You will see severing of all the little tiny fingers in your wallet. And you will see more extreme punishments for those that do commit crimes. You're going to see what China has. Those people who thought that they were under a lot of control and had power, especially the ones who are in the government, are punished quite harshly. China does not play. These people are living very sad lives right now, and you're going to start seeing that occur. Now, some people argue that during this period of change, it can go either way. They argue that the United States and the West can either become full-on totalitarian, electronically monitored nations, or they can collapse and become agrarian, hopeless Portugals. I argue that yes, that's a possibility, but as time goes on, seeing how Asia and the rest of the world is behaving, I see the likelihood of a collapse, whether it's a sudden collapse or staged collapse, to be more prevalent. Meaning that it's highly likely that the United States is going to sever and collapse in stages, and the result will be survival on the local level. I like to see a destruction of the federal government and replacing with state governments, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Federal government will not allow that, meaning that there has to be cataclysmic disruptions of some nature within the United States, and that's going to ripple across the effects of all the nations, the proxy nations that's tethered to it. All of Europe is a proxy group of nations tethered to the United States. When the United States goes down, they're all going to start fracturing. Now's the time to gather some money, huh? So you can take advantage and become a carpetbagger once all those nations collapse. You would think. I don't really give a damn. So we are going to see, so we see what's on the other side of this. A world that's calmer, a world that's healthier, a world that's nicer, a world with less crime. That's what we're seeing on the other side. That's pretty good, right? So that's something to look forward to. And you're going to see this manifest in all sorts of ways, such as education for the kids, such as how you get medical care and what medical care you actually get. In China, there's a huge network on preventative care. America, not so much. So in America, it's you have to be really bad to start going into a hospital, unless you're very poor, and then you can go all the time. But it's a mess. So if you want to be on the other side of this collapsing period of change, you start implementing it right now in your own life. That way it's not a shock to your system. It's not sudden to your system. When cars become too expensive to drive, or the ability to get gas is restricted, or replacement of the Tesla batteries is impossible, it's a good thing to be able to supplement everything you do by your daily bike rides, isn't it? It doesn't affect you that much. And instead of buying processed Velveeta cheese or these cheese in these little snippets, you go to your local dairy that's down the road that makes milk and also makes cheese. Oh, they're not making cheese? Have you ever thought about making your own local cheese? Something I've always wanted to do, by the way. Make your own cheese. Make your own wines. Make your own beers. Sure, your first products will not be perfect. They might even actually be disasters, but you keep with it. Over time, you become better and better and better. Having the ability to provide a product will greatly enhance your ability to survive during a period of change and thrive after a period of change. Whatever that ability may be. That's what you want. People who will have the hard time will be those that have fully invested in the old system, where they have a career, they are experts at designing windshield wipers, and suddenly the rug is pulled out from under them and they don't know what to do. They're fat, they're overweight, they don't have a bicycle, their bank accounts are closed, the money they have is worthless. What are they going to do? Shock. They're going to start selling their possessions. I know, I was in that position over and over again. You need to have a skill. You need to have prudent investments. And you need to have a part of a community that can support each other when everybody starts having a hard time. You need to be like the Waltons, for those of you who are of the older generation. The Waltons was a story of a people named the Waltons, a big family who lived during the Depression in a small community, and how they in the community worked together and got through this period of hardship. Maybe you might want to make the recipe These two old ladies had a moonshine still that they used to make the recipe to. They were very popular, known throughout the community for their still during the period of Prohibition. Obviously, it was a Great Depression with Prohibition. All right. Things that make you wonder, huh? I do not believe the worst case death throw scenarios that a lot of people kind of banter about and are in the movies, where most of the civilization is destroyed, there's no electronics, everything is gone. I do not see that. I see a functioning internet one way or the other. I see electricity in various regions. I see people talking and communicating and walking and industry working, but it's a completely different nature, and it's going to be a completely different environment. And you need to adapt to that. It's that simple. As time moves forward, I'm seeing a lot of the things that John Titor talked about seeming to manifest, such as when he was talking about what his life was like before he entered his time dimensional craft. Certainly the world that he described as destroying everything did not occur on our timeline. For those of you who believe in timelines like that, certainly we're on a totally different template right now. The world has changed. Maybe he was a participant, maybe not. Maybe he was a hoaxer, maybe not. But the world that he described certainly does look like it's manifesting. The world that he described seems to be manifesting. And either he was a great futurist predicting the future, or actually telling the truth. We don't know. There are certain trend lines that seem to be happening. The fourth turning by Strauss and Ho seems to be manifesting right on target. The Deagel Report, the remote viewing of 2025, seems to be absolutely accurate except for the death counts. The only way I can see death counts like they're predicting is a combination of bioweapon and nuclear destruction simultaneously, along with famine. Those three things together would make the numbers match. So that's still up in the air. So unless somebody, so famine is unlikely in the United States, though inflation is. Nuclear war, well, certainly the leadership in the United States is pushing towards a suicide move in that direction. And of course, I've talked long and hard until I'm hoarse about the bioweapon assaults upon China. So the Deagel Report seems to be manifesting. So all this stuff seems to be pointing to contentious periods of change, but I think you'll all be able to get through it if you recognize the reality of the situation, look at things as they are and not as you wish them to be. If you're thinking that one of these days that you are going to vote a new guy in American office and he's going to change everything, forget that. America does not have a democracy. It's an oligarchy-run military empire that appoints puppets, and you just play the charade game. Policy is maintained until the oligarchy is killed off or the oligarchy changes. It's going to be the same old, same old. And that is the reality. But you know, Things are happening. And the world is changing, and that's a good thing. I've talked long and hard about the things you have to do to manifest this little bit of reality, fate forecasting, intention prayer campaigns. Work those campaigns, people. It takes time for them to manifest. Don't expect immediate answers. Okay? Be part of your community. Participate. Don't be a spectator. Don't be a spectator. Participate. Provide some services to others. Don't be caught off guard like you're an attractive gal in an urban area and suddenly everything breaks down. What are you going to do? What resources do you have? Don't be caught off guard. Be prepared. This is not a science fiction movie we're going into. Having 60 guns isn't going to do you anything, except maybe you might be able to barter and sell some of them and trade for some food stuff if things get really bad. Be part of the local community in whatever roles that you can fit. If you don't have one, organize one. Don't think it's necessary right now? Well, then don't worry about that. Worry about setting up the preliminaries. Meeting the people in your neighborhood, getting to know all of them, talking with them, communicating with them, having meals with them. You pay for the damn meals. Being nice and kind and friendly and smiling. Maybe you don't get along with some of the people you meet, but they're not going to say anything bad about you if you buy them some meals and you smile a lot. They may call you a little bit ignorant and naive, but they won't be bad-mouthing you. No matter how negative they are. Be a good person, and things will be good for you. So, depending upon where you live, the urgency to make these changes in your life, while the entire situation changes, will vary. Some of you have an urgency, such as PL, to be part of the local community defense organizations, where everybody's helping each other and setting up networks just in case there's a breakdown, just in case. Only in emergencies. While others may see things might be fine, such as in Singapore or Malaysia or parts of Africa, in which case you set up your networks. Be kind to dogs and cats. If you're kind to the neighborhood dogs, and they see that you're being attacked, they will defend you. And cats, by the way, want you to be happy and healthy because you're their friend. And they will calm down and mitigate your environment around you. Know your neighbors. Know the farms in your areas. Talk to the people. Be helpful. And a long duration, this is not something you just do for 1 or 2 weeks and then you stop because life takes over. It has to be part of your life. You have to make these changes an integral part in your life. Just like you're doing your affirmations, it becomes part of your life. You have to make these changes. You have to say, I am going to ride a bike 1 day a week. Doesn't matter what day it is, but that day, I don't use my car, I ride a bicycle. Then later on you say, I am going to use my bicycle 2 days a week instead of a car. You make these changes and you integrate them in your life. You start getting out more, you start communicating with people, you start becoming more in tune with your community. And that's how we get over the hump. By setting these aspects of life into place, when the big changes occur, and they will occur, all the indicators are flashing, they will occur, you will be ready and you will just slide right through the changes without much impact. And that's what I hope for all the readers and the listeners to Metallic Man. Now, I'm going to give you some positive feedback from the commander. Take it as you will, whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. Things are proceeding as planned. There are systems in place to handle some of the issues, many of which you are not aware of because they're not public, they're secret, but things are going on and you are unaware of them because they're not being reported. But even though some of those things are bad, you needn't worry about that because it's all part of an expected event profile that is well mature and well understood. And because of this, there is a strong probability that things are going to be a lot of small bads, no big bads. A big bad is certainly on the table, but it looks more like there's going to be a series of small bads and some general collapsing systems that you need to be prepared for. And that is my message to the audience right now. Prepare for some changes in systems that you have grown accustomed to. Many of you are already involved in adaptation. Don't be the dodo bird. Adapt, and you'll be fine. Don't go for the fear-mongering, okay? That being said, the risk of a big bad is always prevalent. But even at a big bad, I can tell you that it will be localized. It will not be global. Any big bads, were they to occur, it would be the West that would suffer greatly. You may not want to hear it, but yeah, that's the projection. So keep in mind to keep everything under control and you'll be just fine. And so, as we've talked about all this, while the seismic chart is ringing up and down and up and down and the bells are flashing, it's all localized to the west, to the Western Hemisphere, the unipolar nations, not the multipolar nations of the East. For them in China, everything's okay. Everything's fine. Okay? Certainly nobody in China and in the West wants to see a catastrophic collapse of the West. Nobody does. China doesn't. But everybody realizes that the West, the United States, needs to be bitch slapped for some sensibility, some realistic sensibility. And as Fred illustrated, they're all idiots. They are totally oblivious. And they may not be capable of being bitch slapped, in which case big bads will occur. But they'll be localized. And you will be surviving, you'll be fine. So disentangle, set up systems, set up structures, and glide through the period of change, and you'll be fine. And that's my words of wisdom today. I hope that you all are doing well, and just remember to smile a lot. Please smile a lot. All right? Help other people. Smile and help other people. Be part of a community. Do your best. And at that, guys, I want to end up with my basic words of advice. Be good. Smile. Make a difference in the world that you live in. Be good to dogs, cats. Be helpful. Be the Rufus. Participate. Don't be a spectator. And when the situation calls, take action. And at that, guys, remember,